Phil's going to get us recording. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the Friday of Memorial Day weekend Yamhill Leadership Roundtable. We've got Commissioner Rick Olson, Yamhill County Commissioner, Casey Kulla, Yamhill County Commissioner. We've got Representative Noble. We've got Representative Gomberg. We've got Mayor Cape of Amity. We've got Counsilor Drabkin standing in place of Mayor Scott Hill of McMinnville. And we've got Scott Cooper from MEDP. So welcome. Commissioner Olson, do you want to ask the same question you asked before to Representative Gomberg, or should we just let him go? Representative Gomberg, what would you like to update us about, especially given that you have wine country and you have the coast in your district?
You know, I have the best of districts because I have wine and cheese. What could be better than that? And the commissioner had asked the question a moment ago, how do I feel about large gatherings, sports events, concerts, etc.? And what I had said is that, first of all, I'm very pleased that fraternal organizations like the Elks, the Eagles, and other fraternal groups like that have now qualified to be treated the same as restaurants. They do provide those kind of food services for their members, but also play a much larger role in many of our communities. And I'm glad that they are given the opportunity to reopen and abide by, as they abide by the same rules that restaurants do. That's a constructive step, but it really avoids the question the commissioner was asking: is what about big events? And my sense of that is that we need to watch how things evolve as we move through phase one. Out here at the coast, and you know, most of my district covers the coast, although we stretch inland to southern Yamhill County. We're very concerned about how the influx of visitors is going to impact our exposure rates. We've been very successful so far in keeping the numbers down. I think there are 6 in Yamhill County, or excuse me, 6 in Tillamook and 7 in Lincoln. Nobody hospitalized. So we need to watch that very carefully before we start talking about some of our large events, even though we're very dependent on those large events. The Kite Festival in Lincoln City, the county fair in Tillamook, and parades up and down the coast that have been canceled. I'm even hearing about major community events in December that are being canceled right now, and that's very distressing. I hope that we have some constructive news and can move through these phases very quickly. Before I close, because I certainly want to give Representative Noble some microphone time. He's got a lot more of Yamhill County than I do. But I'm disappointed a little bit that the mayor and some of the good folks from Sheridan that I represent are not on the call today, because we got news just earlier this week that the fire station in Sheridan has qualified for and will receive a $2 million renovation and retrofit grant, something that my office certainly went to bat for. So that's good news in Sheridan and good news for Yamhill County. It's a little bit of that non-COVID news, that there are other things out there, and keeping our first responders in the best possible position to respond quickly is part of that. $2 million for the Sheridan Fire Station.
Casey, the reason I asked Representative Gomberg about that, because my concern is, and I understand everything you're saying, Representative, but my concern is if a lot of the extracurricular activities associated with high school and college, such as drama, such as arts, such as athletics, the fact is that those are a lot of events that keep kids in school. If they didn't have those extracurricular activities, they wouldn't be in school. My concern is if they don't have those extracurricular activities, that number one, you're going to see a larger dropout rate. You're going to see more juvenile crime. You're going to see more vandalism, because those kids won't have anything to do. And so I guess it's not as much as the size of the gatherings, but it's the fact that if they're not allowed to participate, or if there's no participation in those fall sports events, we're really really doing a lot of the kids an injustice.
Well,
that was the reason I bring that up.
I think you make an excellent point, Commissioner, and we need to get some folks together and ask some very provocative questions. It's not about the 150 people sitting in the stands. It's about the 18 players on the diamond, or the number that are on the football field. And can we get those few people together? They won't have social distancing, and I don't know how they're going to look in masks and helmets. But I think there's some questions to be asked there.
Yes.
I agree. Those are the real questions that need to be asked, because it really isn't about the gatherings of 150. It's the gatherings of ensuring that our school kids have something to do, have something they like to do, or they're just not going to go to school. And that's my big concern.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Gomberg, do you have anything else you'd like to tell the community?
Well, certainly that it's Memorial Day weekend, and I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful holiday weekend. Traditionally, this is a time when we look to the beginning of summer, and everybody gets out and away from home and heads to the wine country, heads to the beach, heads to the gorge, heads to the mountains. The governor, together with a number of mayors, many of the mayors in my district, has released a letter saying this year, please celebrate at home, and that the beach will still be there, the wine country will still be there, the mountains and the gorge will still be there. Celebrate at home this year. My message is that while on Memorial Day we honor the men and women that have served in our military, we can take an extra moment this year to also honor the men and women that are first responders, healthcare providers, or even are on the front lines in our grocery stores, making sure that we are safe, that we are well, that we are fed. This is a time to honor everybody who is stepping up to support our communities.
Great. Thank you very much, Representative. Yes, I agree. We do need to expand it, or consider expanding it. There's a lot of people who are doing a lot in our communities right now. Representative Noble, what would you like to tell people in your district? And welcome back from an election season of sorts.
Oh, yes. Well, for all of us. You know what, we're right in the middle of what we call legislative days, right now in the legislature, not to be confused with the legislative session, but where we have committee meetings. Normally those occur within 3 days. My first committee meeting was this morning. My last one will be on June 8th. So they're spread out because we can have one at a time in the building just based on technological resources. But again, it's not a legislative session, it's a committee meetings for information. So today's committee meeting for me is healthcare. And it was good to get a 3-hour summary of where we are in the state with healthcare from OHA and others. And the big message I guess I would give us is we're trying to move forward. And there's some issues we need to deal with. The commissioners may be aware that as we're moving forward and trying to figure out Medicaid, where we assume that there's going to be an increase of people who need to receive some assistance through Medicaid, that there are new waivers being applied for, and still trying to assess what the impacts that will be on our CCO. The CCOs all throughout the state, but Yamhill CCO as well. I think if you're in ag land, you also know that OSHA has implemented some new requirements for agriculture. Just to be blunt, some are controversial. Some are consistent with other industries, and some are not. So there's been a few meetings lately to kind of navigate that and provide safety and health for our workers on the fields, and at the same time allow us to get the crop in without truly bankrupting our farmers. So there's a balance. I've found actually that they're both willing to work together. It's just we haven't got to that point yet. You know, it's just to dovetail quickly, I won't be going to Pacific City this weekend as much as I'd love to, but you know, we still are in this midst of people are in a lot of ways still driven by fear. If you recall Maslow's hierarchy, we have people driven by their base security and health, and so we have people who are driven by fear on what the potential health hazards are, which are real, and we have people driven by fear as to what their livelihood is going to be and where their next meal and where their paycheck is coming from. And I think we just need to be sensitive to know that we're all out there. I think 2 weeks ago when I talked about people, and I'll say it again, this is about people, and we need to recognize that we're all, to borrow the Facebook post that was going around not too long ago, we're all in the same storm, but we all have different circumstances, and we need to give each other a little bit of grace. So as we continue to move forward, there will be a host of issues that we're all dealing with at all different levels of government. But this is a time where we can pull together and ensure that we are providing the best we can for the people that we serve.
Great. Thank you very much, Representative, for those thoughts. Does anybody have questions for Representative Noble or for Representative Gomberg? I apologize, I forgot to ask. And Counsilor Drabkin and Scott Cooper, you know, you're kind of new here. Feel free to ask the questions, the hard ones or the easy ones.
The hard ones go to Representative Noble, the easy ones come to me, just to be clear.
I'm never shy to ask questions. I've got some good notes. I just don't have questions yet, but don't worry.
You know, I have one, Casey, and I think I brought up last time, and Counselor Drabkin wasn't on the call. I've been getting a lot of emails regarding the wine tasting at wineries, that a lot of the wineries did not realize that when they got their OLCC permit, and I say, well, Remy could probably chime in this, when they got their OLCC permits were set up for serving in a certain area, a tasting room or something. So a lot of the solutions, a lot of the big wineries are thinking about is, well, they'll just maintain that 6-foot social distancing by moving some of it outside, which they've done for years anyway. Well, it turns out if you want to expand your serving area, which is defined by your license, you actually have to fill out a form and get approved by the OLCC. Well, the OLCC isn't ready to approve signing all those forms. They said it could take a month to a month and a half to get a lot of those forms signed. So here, you know, we're asking everybody to maintain, especially Yamhill County being a tourism and a winery county, wine county, we're asking them to maintain social distancing. The wineries can do it by putting people outside in the grass or whatever to maintain that social distancing, but they can't do it because their license doesn't allow it. So Remy, I don't know if you know much about that or.
Sure. So there's a number of organizations that are advising the industry as a whole. So the Oregon Wine Board is having regular meetings similar to this one. So a lot of conference calls and Zoom meetings, and also sending out a lot of written information. And that information is largely being flowing through the law firm of Davis Wright Tremaine, which advises the Oregon Wine Board and therefore kind of acts to advise really the whole Oregon wine industry. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, more regionally, the Willamette Valley Wineries Association is also regularly holding meetings, putting out information, and helping wineries develop guidelines. The OLCC did send out an email this morning about expansion of premises applications. To be honest, I haven't read that email yet. I think it's a pretty simple form. As you pointed out, the issue will be the ability to process those forms. I also know smaller subregions are having their own meetings so that there's some sameness happening in areas. So for instance, my tasting room is in the South Dundee Hills. So we've been having South Dundee Hills meetings so that we all kind of know what everybody else is doing and what to expect. Most people as well, in order to help with crowd control, most wineries that I know of are going to by reservation or by appointment only. just because it will be very difficult. I also know a lot of people, myself included, that chose, we could have feasibly been ready with equipment, etc., everything marked out and spacing for this weekend, but we were actually concerned about doing just what we're not supposed to be doing, which is inviting people to come down and travel. So we are actually delaying opening an entire week, just so we're not opening on a typically busy holiday weekend. So it'll be interesting, though, what you say about the lead time in processing those applications. And I wonder how wineries will choose to respond to that.
Yeah, well, thanks, Remy. I mean, that adds a lot to the puzzle, but the biggest complaint I got was exactly what we talked about, was the how long it takes to get it approved, because the application is a very simple application, but when they're told it might be 4 weeks, might be 5 weeks before they can approve it, things can change totally by then. And OLCC, I don't know how good they will actually enforce it, but that makes a difference with a lot of the smaller wineries and everything too. Like your winery, you use out under the trees and a lot for letting people come in and sit, and if that's not designated as part of your wine tasting area and figured in the square feet, you can't use it. And
well, sorry, Commissioner, please.
No, go ahead.
It just makes me think if it's not worth a quick note to the OLCC that this application process might mimic a service permit application. When you fill out a service permit application, you send it in with your money and you are essentially approved for that application, and then you just have to do the next step. So perhaps I could draft a quick letter and send around that our representatives, that it's important, not necessarily from tourism, but just in terms of keeping business alive, that if OLCC could amend their criteria for that application, that as long as you've submitted it, you don't have to wait for approval.
Yeah, Remy, that would be a good thing to send around. I need to send an email to Steve Marks anyway, so.
So you got that?
Got it. That was a good answer, Remy. You're right on top of it.
You don't have to do anything. That's great.
That's right. You're right on top of it.
All right. We've sidetracked our representatives here, but I wanted to ask them thoughts on a special session. A lot of people are asking me if there's going to be a special session. So, and while I'm very grateful for what the e-board has done, that there's still that question remaining. So.
I'll go ahead and start. And I appreciate the question. A lot of us are asking the same question. The background is that we had originally talked about holding a special session in April, again in May, but we had been told that there was a desire to wait until after the revenue forecast was released. Now, you know that the revenue forecast came out this week and said in large part what we expected it to say, that people are unemployed, so they're not going to be paying income taxes, that sales are off, which means that corporations are not going to be paying corporate taxes as much. People aren't driving as much, so gasoline taxes will be down. Video machines that are largely in bars and taverns that have been closed for the last 2 months are not generating lottery dollars. And in total, we are looking at a shortfall, a reduction of about, gosh, I'm trying to remember was it 1.7? 2, I'd have to go look at the numbers. I had them at the tip of my tongue. We are looking at a significant shortfall in the budget, and it's not just going to be for the coming biennium, but expected to stretch out for over the next 5 or 8 years. As a consequence of that, already the governor is asking state agencies to make proposals for reductions in operating budgets of about 17%. 8% per biennium, but because we're in the second half, that's going to turn into a 17% cut, which can affect education, transportation, our forest fighting capacity, or healthcare and mental health, transportation, on and on and on. Those budget changes are being proposed. Not all of them are going to be adopted, but it's a very dire situation that we're looking at. Ron, I wonder if you've got anything to add to that quick overview.
Well, I think you as far as the budget goes, I think you're right. I think I'm going to be a little bit more just direct and say that as long as the governor believes that she can handle and navigate what's going on, then I don't expect that we'll see a special session. I think probably where we are is depending on the Supreme Court ruling that is going to be coming out soon. She may have to go to the legislature to get authorization to continue what she wants to do from an emergency perspective. So right now, I think everything's in flux, other than I think if the Supreme Court rules consistent with the district court or the circuit court, then we would probably see the governor call us into special session. But again, your guess is as good as mine.
And to double check those numbers real quick, it's 2.7 billion in the next biennium, but expected to go to as much as 10 billion over the next several years.
Right, thank you.
Casey, I'd like a clarification. I think Representative Gomberg could probably answer this best, or Representative Noble. There seems to be some confusion with the 17% cut. Since we're in the second year of the biennium now, the current biennium, if that 17% is over the biennium, does that mean that the counties have to basically absorb that whole 17% in this year of the biennium before the new biennium? Because we've already got the funding and everything for the first year. So where does that lay it? Or do you only have to meet the 8.5% for the second year of the biennium?
Well, Commissioner, what I'm talking about are cuts to state budgets, and if there are services that are coming through to the counties that are affected by any of those particular cuts, then yes, you would be seeing the 17% adjustment. But I want to make it clear that what I'm talking about is some adjustments in budgets to state agencies.
Correct, and those budgets for state agencies, you know, it's just like us, since counties are so much funded through the state and the federal government, all of our HHS programs, our other health programs, criminal justice programs, it was a concern that if a department or an area like HHS had to make up all 17%, and this isn't just state, this is it's a water runs downhill. I guess if the counties then would have to absorb that 70% in the second year of the biennium and not over the biennium.
And Commissioner, I want to be respectful. I see that Senator Boquist has joined us, and I don't know if he heard the original question, but we were talking about the likelihood of a special session, and in the context of the revenue forecast that came out this week.
And I'm trying to, I apologize, Senator Boquist, welcome, and I'm trying to unmute you, so we'll see what I can do here. Let's see, I'm going to unmute all, but
well, you just asked everybody to unmute, so.
Yeah,
I see a note popping up that he has no bandwidth for voice.
Oh.
So,
he might not have joined with voice either.
He's a great typer, so. Well, Senator Boquist, welcome. And if you would like, we're happy to just read out the things that you type. So it's good to have you with us. So Senator Boquist also notes that gas tax revenue forecast is not out yet. I know that in our county, the the forecast, the rough forecast that was given to Public Works was a 14% decrease in the state highway fund dollars that go to the county. So, but yes, some weeks there's gas tax income has gone down, revenue has gone down by 50%. So that's one of the things that Senator Boquist says. Would folks like to ask the senator more questions, and then we can look at what they are in the chat?
I'm just reading what he's putting in the chat. So
I love it. This is great. Okay, well, with that, maybe what we can do is we can actually move on to what Mayor Cape would like to tell people in the community, both for Amity and in his role at Salem Kaiser.
Yeah, thanks, Casey. There's a lot there I could go on for, but I'll start with Amity, and Representative Gomberg mentioned that letter that came out from the governor's office, essentially asking people not to travel, and Jody Christensen, who represents us and from the governor's office, reached out to a lot of us, myself included, to sign on to that letter. And I didn't sign it, not because I'm opposed to the message or anything like that. I just asked if I could read the letter before agreeing to put my name to it. And they were not able to do that. And then later in the afternoon, I got busy at work, and then she sent out some example language of what might be used. But by the time I got back, it was already too late. So that's why my name's not on there, not anything against the letter or anything like that. I'm not for or against it. I didn't get a chance to read it and put my name to it. So we are getting ready for budget season. We're holding our city's budget committee. We're starting that this coming week. So excited to move forward with that. I know Salem Kaiser Schools, where I work, they just rolled their budget forward. So they have an approved budget, and then they just know that they're going to have shortfalls next year. And so we're already preparing for that. So I guess kind of segueing into that too, one of the big things that they're doing, where are we at, with budget shortfalls and whatnot. We had been anticipating up to a $48 million shortfall for the school district for next year. And then after the revenue forecast came out, that went down to $32 to $35 million. So still pretty significant. The school district did move forward with furloughing some employees for some days. And they are anticipating that will provide a savings of $8 to $10 million between now and the end of July. And so the hope was to be able to do that now to reduce the amount of cuts we might be facing next year. So a lot of other things are on hold. The community did pass a rather large bond measure for construction several years ago, and so those construction projects are still going on, and I think that's a key to keep people employed and moving forward, as well as at some point the schools are going to need the space. So and then I kind of like to circle back a little bit to what Commissioner Olson was talking about, with activities for kids. One of the big things I've been involved with in my life as a teacher, when I was teaching high school, is FFA, the extracurricular activities, keeping kids involved. And I still do help out quite a bit with that, working with several kids with their speeches and the different activities that they do. And I know several kids are just really hurting because of the effects and how things have changed. And I know organizations like FFA have worked hard to make some changes in their operations and to make something happen, but it's just nowhere near what they're used to and what the their experiences and expectations of experiences. So I know kids are really hurting with that, and to me, as we move forward, there's a lot of talk in my world, well, what is it going to look like for schools to reopen? And and when I talk to my employees that my bus drivers that I work with, they always, well, what's it going to be like? What, when are we going to know? So many questions, and our answers really are the same. It's we don't know, and by and large, we're waiting for information from the Department of Ed. That they have been really tight-lipped and not providing any information to us at all. And so I was excited to hear from Jody. She mentioned earlier today on the LOC conference call, if people were on that the state's going to start looking at providing some guidelines for phase 2 next week. And so I'm really hopeful that there might be some inclusion on what that's going to look like for education. As with my job, I've attended several webinars the last couple of weeks, and including people from all across the country, and everybody seems to be in the same spot. And they're everybody from New York to Texas to Florida, California. Everybody is saying, we're waiting for some information from our state. I understand Texas is starting to provide a little bit of guidance. So I imagine other states are going to be looking at what the Texas Department of Education is doing and getting that information out there. But everybody says too, that's such a big key to opening up the economy, having somewhere for the kids to go so the parents can go back to work. So I just see that as a huge thing that needs to come soon, some information, and so that we can move forward. At Salem Kaiser, we've created, not we, because it's not me, the people higher than me have created kind of 4 committees to look at different options of what school might look like, so that we can start working on what those plans would be. And then when we do get that guidance from the Department of Ed, we can hopefully be, at least a couple steps forward. We can say, oh, this model that we've been working on is going to fit those guidelines the closest. And so now how do we mold that to fit how we need to move forward? So I know schools across the state are really working on that. And I think the other part to that I keep hearing and telling people too is, I think they don't want confusion between this school year and next school year. And so I really see, this week my daughter, her school's finishing up. She's in high school, so she has finals next week. And then public schools will be finishing up over the next couple of weeks as well. And so I really see it being time. It seems to fit. We've got kind of some of the economic information. Representative Noble got to enjoy a 3-hour summary, not even a detail, but just a summary meeting from the health department. My apologies to you, sir. So, I really feel like it's time to start getting that information and so that we can move forward. And whether that's like Commissioner Olson was saying, I don't even think we're really looking at, do we have football games at Amity High School this fall? I think it's just, do we open up the schools and let the kids in there? And one of the panelists on the webinar that I listened to yesterday, he made just a great comment, and he said, we're not going to be able to make it a risk-free environment. Regardless, you're going to have kids in a building and they're going to be moving around, and you're going to have teachers and staff and people that are in at-risk categories. And so it's not a question of if there's going to be a risk. The question is, how do you mitigate that risk and work within your limitations? And so I think that's really the way that panelist put it was a really well worded, and I really see, at least for us in the transportation end of it, that's what we're looking at. You can't transport 60, 70 kids on a school bus with there not being any risk, right? So there's going to be a risk. The alternative, when you look at the transit guidelines, transit industry guidelines from the state, if we follow those, we're going to be limited to 6 kids on a school bus. And you can't transport 20,000 kids in Salem Kaiser every day one way with 6 kids on a bus. Just the numbers don't work. You'd spend all day getting all the kids to school, and then you'd have no time to get them back. So those are the interesting things that I think we're looking at. And then as my mind is kind of traveling around in circles, I'll loop back in conclusion to the city. We did put in for the reimbursement for the Corona relief funds, that first pot of money. We didn't have much to spend, so we didn't spend much, so we don't have much to ask for in reimbursement. I do want to reiterate my continual claims is finding resources to help our residents with their water utility bill, and the Treasury Department guidelines for those funds does include water utility relief assistance. However, the state is not accepting that as part of the application. We did include that, and they returned the form to us and said no, at least as far as this first go around on it. So I'm really hopeful that we can continue to work with the state, all the people involved at the state level with that, and get some funds there to help people, because we hear so much about 5G broadband internet access being such a huge priority. I don't see a bigger human need than fresh, clean water. The health needs and everything else on top of that. So I just really see that as something that should be at the top of our priority. So I'll leave it at that. I probably talked more than I have my fair share of time. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I really appreciate it. You hit a lot of areas that we all need to know about and that people in the community need to know about. So I really appreciate it. And I just want to note that Representative Gomberg added a comment in the chat. Do you want to just speak it, Representative, rather than me reading your words?
Well, I don't want to hog the conversation here, Commissioner, but we were talking about budget issues, and one part that is a particular consequence of those lottery dollars. The state economist is anticipating a 23% decline in lottery revenues. That represents about $364 million. As you know, lottery proceeds go primarily to economic development, which is going to be very, very important in the recovery process, but also to education and based on the recent acts by the voters, we're also putting some money into parks, watersheds, veterans programs, and outdoor schools. So the lottery is going to be down by $360 million. That's going to affect our ability to recover.
Yeah, thank you very much. For us, it's a very important source of revenue for the county. So, but I'd also like to note that your work on the e-board with getting that 400 million out, or I guess the 200 million in the first round that Mayor Cape also referred to, we will be submitting, well, we were going to today, but the deadline's been put off, but we'll be submitting for reimbursements so far of about 750,000, which is a significant amount of money for the county. So I want to thank you. All right. I would love to go on to Counsilor Drabkin, kind of speaking not on behalf of the city of McMinnville, but in her role as counselor. So what would you like to tell people both in the community and here on the call?
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for the invitation today. I'll give a little overview of some of the McMinnville specific things that are happening. So we recently approved, this is kind of non-COVID related, but recently approved a SAFER grant for our fire department, looking to add 3 fire positions. Also, COVID related, we have reopened our parks, and then this past weekend, we also opened our tennis and our pickleball courts to single and family play. That just happened yesterday, as well as a couple of skate parks. And then our parks have signage posted around them that read "crowds equal closures." And of course, per the governor's guidelines, we're limiting group size to 10 for any outdoor recreation. In terms of our police department, you may have read in the paper about the number of arrests. So we saw a huge spike in burglaries, both at businesses and churches here. And through a task force and community involvement, there were a large number of arrests, and they were basically able to break up this crime ring. So kudos to our McMinnville Police Department on their work there. Let's see, from our on our airport, the city does have an application in for some airport work. It'll be before our city council next Tuesday to accept some CARES Act money. And so I'd be happy to report back once we know that I presume that will be approved, but that's not necessarily a safe presumption, we all know, but that'll be in front of the city council next Tuesday to accept a CARES grant for our airport. In terms of water, as it came up here, as you all know, we have McMinnville Water and Light that provides those utilities to our residents, and currently disconnections for non-payment for residential customers have been suspended. Late charges and delinquency process charges are being waived to all residential customers. And the $3.95 convenience fee for paying with a credit card or a debit card or an e-check is also being waived. And let's see, and then to more community partnerships, the McMinnville Downtown Association has been working with the city of McMinnville, and I know Scott can speak to this. It's also with the Stable Table now looking to develop a plan for our downtown. I know you are all familiar with the concept at this point of spill out. So the OLCC has made the allowance for restaurants to have spill outs with outside service. The county has approved that would be allowed if with a notification to the health department. And then currently there's a plan that's being worked on to find ways to make 3rd Street feel more safe and support those downtown businesses and restaurants. And of course, that's no easy thing in terms of what would feel right and what would feel equitable. It's a complicated idea, but it is being pursued actively by the MDA, the McMinnville Downtown Association, which was a group that was formed initially to create economic prosperity downtown. So they have the unfortunate circumstance of being needed in that original capacity once again. Also, the McMinnville Farmers Market has reopened in a physical sense with, of course, spacing, etc. But that was a big deal to get that up and running. And then the YCAP sheltering program is having really good results as of as of at this point 2 weeks ago. So these numbers have probably gone up by now. But the YCAP emergency motel placement is sheltering now 41 households. That was 64 people. So at this point, these are men and women, seniors, veterans, and those fleeing domestic violence. The participants in that program are being chosen by vulnerability to themselves and their populations in terms of the CDC guidelines. So the most vulnerable households are getting placed first. And then the good news that comes out of that is that there are project exits happening rather quickly. So as those households had that stability and there was regular access to services, and that they were also in this dependable location. So YCAP always knew where to find the people that were trying to get services. There have been 7 now positive exits, meaning that people have moved into either permanent housing or, if necessary, into a treatment facility. There have also been 2 negative exits, so people that have returned to the streets. And just as an idea, that is being populated by people that were either living in their streets or in their car or other places that were not meant for habitation largely. There was a few that also entered from a hospital or a residential facility, and some as well that entered from a shelter facility. I think that's my update for now.
Great, thank you very much, Counsilor Drabkin. Does anybody have questions for her? As the city of McMinnville is doing a lot right now. My only question is, I read in the paper that there were 49 arrests of 35 individuals.
No comment.
Representative Noble may know how that works, but I don't. I'm new at this, so.
I have one. Maybe Remy will have the answer for it. Counselor, has there been any projected date when the tie between McMinnville's water system and Lafayette's water system will go active? I noticed they're putting in the 18-inch conduit and everything now. So is there any date that we will start actually providing Lafayette with water?
I don't know that. I don't know if there is a finish date. All construction projects the timeline has moved so radically, but I'm happy to look into that for you, Commissioner.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
And the last I heard, it was July, but I think they're moving faster than that. So wonderful. Thank you, Counselor. I'd love to go now to Scott Cooper from McMinnville Economic Development Partnership. And what would you like to tell businesses, especially out in the community, and then people on the call?
Thank you, Commissioner Kulla. I guess the main thing I'd like to start with is we've been working with SEDCOR, our Regional Economic Development Partners, on a PPE directory, and that is live and has been for a couple of days. It can be found at sedcor.com/page/PPE directory. It is a regional localized listing of manufacturers who are making PPE, and it's basically kind of a listing house of availability, minimum quantities, what they're making, masks, UVC lights, face shields, gowns, gloves, boot coverings, or shoe coverings, everything. So our public and our businesses can have a resource to go to find those materials that they're looking for, and a direct contact to those to make them available. It's one of those things that will be constantly updated and improved as we get more companies that may be out there that are doing this and updating and to how they are, how the manufacturing is going in each of those businesses. As always, the more word we can get out with some of these things. We've got a company here in McMinnville, RP Advanced Mobile Systems, that is doing it's fairly new technology, I would guess, to the public, UVC lighting and its ability to kill the virus. And they have equipment anywhere from handheld size to room size to mass transit abilities, buses, operating rooms, places of business that can utilize this UVC lighting. And the more word we can get that out to people and that technology's availability, it's certainly a pretty amazing thing of what they can do. And I noticed this week on a few ABC and a few other national programs had some conversations about that. New York City just spent $1 million for their subway systems and UVC lighting programs to help with those. And certainly you've been a tremendous amount of help in that, Commissioner, with getting PPE word out. And the more that we can all do that to our businesses, certainly the better off we'll be, because as you have all mentioned, and as we all know, this is not something we're going to stop needing in a week. This is going to be ongoing. So we'll certainly keep that localized and regional as long as we can. Depending on the growth and the need, that may be something I know the SEDCOR has talked about it, and we've talked about reviewing that as bringing it out and expanding the location of that. But we wanted to certainly make sure it was available to our region and local first. If you're interested, I just had a meeting on the first round of the Business Oregon Emergency Fund session. There were 46 applications in round one. The ask of those 46 was about $7 million on a $2.5 million pot. No surprise. But the good news is that they're working that all of the applications will get some. And that decision they hope to have by Tuesday. And the second round of funding, which opens up to CDFIs and economic development districts, will go out perhaps as early as this afternoon, but it may be early next week as well. So that's good news that's moving forward, and that is, and I'm sorry, that is for the state, the entire state for those applications. But that's about it. I had a conversation with some colleagues back in Arizona about the PPP program, and the East Valley Chamber there, which represents close to 2 million people. They had about, of their businesses surveyed, 74% applied, and they only had about 25% approval rate. In our survey locally, with our traded sector, we had about 76% apply with a 73% approval rate. And I know that's regionalized and not quite on the same scale. I just thought it was interesting nonetheless. So there's still money available there. There's still around $100 million for PPP. Certainly want our businesses to know that if they're interested, please apply. Thank you as always for all of your help and all of your work. It's very much appreciated.
It looks like the Mayor Cape has a question or comment for you, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I keep forgetting to write down. What's the name of that company working with the UVC?
It's RP Advanced Mobile Systems. Mayor, if you'd like, you can certainly reach out to me at scott@McMinnvillebusiness.com. I'll put you in direct contact with their people.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. The personal protective equipment and medical device market, since we are going to need lots of different things as a country and globally. MEDP and SEDCOR, I feel like together are going to be some really powerful resources with the manufacturers we have in our county and in the region. So we may as well be the ones to make it, right? And then on the Business Oregon money, we look forward as a county to hearing whether our county was part of the approval with the SEDCOR regional ask. So, because that'll mean that we'll have money in small increments for more businesses in the county who are still struggling.
And as you know, we were one of those 46 applicants for the region. And so it'll just be a matter of amount, I suppose. But we had talked just earlier this morning about the application and the process for the second round as well. So that's already in the works too.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioner, before we go into Wendy Valise from PG, Commissioner Olson, is there anything else that you'd like to tell people here in the community and a raid on the call?
No, I think, I've had an opportunity the last couple of days to visit some of McMinnville's downtown merchants and Newburgh's downtown merchants, and drove to a couple like Yamhill and Amity and visited with people. And I'm very impressed with the job that especially the restaurants and some of the local bars have done implementing the governor's guidelines. Yeah, they said some places are only seating like 30% capacity because of the guidelines, but I had several owners tell me 30% capacity is better than no capacity. And especially those that, it was nice for those local businesses that applied for PPP and got it, because I've talked to several employees that said if it wasn't for PPE or PPP, they would be on either welfare or they would be on unemployment. But the PPP program allowed them to maintain, the employers to maintain their payroll. So that's why I have, Casey.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Olson. That's right. It's very significant for folks. Wendy Valise, what would you like to tell us if you're still with us?
I am. I'll just make it very quick.
Okay.
Just wanted to relay a thank you to Yamhill County and Carlton and Lafayette and Newburgh. We asked for a COVID-19 emergency permit to maintain our electric service. It's a critical service, and we just asked if we could work under this permit during this time. And I just want to convey a thank you to all of those communities, because we have kept our crews very busy. Thankfully, because there's been less people on the roads, it's meant a safer environment. It's meant extended hours, so they've been able to take advantage of the change in sunlight. And we've helped helped businesses and residents with maintaining their electric, but also helping keep projects moving forward, a lot of economic and community development projects. And so today I just want to say thank you, because I just heard a report at how much is getting accomplished under that permit.
Great. Thank you very much, Wendy. And it's good to hear the feedback from PGE. So thanks for all of your work. Are there any last comments? Oh, I got one here on the sidebar. Uh-oh. Let me see if I can get it successfully. Okay. Senator Boquist says for everybody on the issue of state budgets, the state's other funds budget loss is not yet forecasted. So the 2.7 billion is actually in the general fund. And then historically, the general fund loss, the other fund's loss has been larger than the general fund loss. Other funds budget was 39 billion compared to the 22 billion general fund loss. I think historically, I think that was in the 2009 recession. So more cuts should be expected once the other fund status has been updated. So that's a good and sobering thing to hear as we all look at budgets. I know in Yamhill County, we're not expected to do a supplemental budget or to revisit the budget before we approve it. But we will be, all of our departments are prepared for cuts in various areas. So we're keeping an eye out, but we have a very capable chief budget officer. So any further thoughts? And I want to really thank Senator Boquist for giving us some typed words today. All right. Have a great and safe weekend. And if you are from the metro area or from Marion and Polk County, maybe be careful if you come to Yamhill County or to the coast. So, and to all of you, we'll be thinking of both our first responders and our frontline workers and all of the folks who have given their lives for us. And with that, have a very safe weekend. Thank you very much for joining us, and see you on Tuesday.
Bye, everyone.